All right, it's the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Hello and welcome. My name is Jackie Bullis. I am a faculty and support classroom consultant in faculty affairs here at UAGC, as well as the host for this session, Unlocking Belonging at the Onset of Higher Education. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC-related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, we have enabled live transcription. If you would like to use it, click Show Captions button at the bottom of your window. Now I am pleased to introduce you to Attah, who is an associate faculty member here at the University of Arizona Global Campus. Take it away, Toby.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. I appreciate you introducing me and being able to have the opportunity to talk to everybody about my presentation. It's titled Unlocking Belonging at the Onset of Higher Education. And like I said, I appreciate it. Just to give a quick introduction about myself, as Jacqueline mentioned, I'm an adjunct faculty here at UAGC, and my primary goal as an instructor is to identify critical skills necessary for academic success, both professionally and personally for my students. And that was just a little quick little aside about me. And to give you a little bit about my academic background, I actually earned a bachelor's degree from Cornell University, where I studied communications with a minor in business administration. And I was also part of the Cornell track and field team, the varsity track and field team. I was even fortunate enough to be a team captain. So teamwork and leadership is something that I've always had a passion for. After completing my bachelor's at Cornell, I was fortunate enough to pursue advanced education at Syracuse University, where I earned my master's degree in media and education. And that just helped me identify more skills necessary to help me navigate different ways to leverage media, technology, and other ways to drive innovation and experiential learning here as my role here at UAGC as adjunct faculty. And right now, I'm currently a doctoral student in the University of Arizona Global Campus's PhD program in organizational leadership and management. I was also fortunate enough to earn an annual entrepreneurship scholarship in 2022 from the Forbes School of Business Technology after explaining my roles and responsibilities as an entrepreneur. That's my introduction. I always like to say that my presentations are work best whenever they're interactive. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and drop them in the chat. And as I ask questions throughout the presentation, feel free to respond in the chat, and we can always discuss it whenever we have a pause period. Without further ado, I wanted to open up this presentation by first addressing the importance of belonging in higher education. Lee Vital highlighted how there is often an adjustment period for students when entering college remotely. And without the luxury of meeting other students, other teachers, faculty, and other tutors in person, there can sometimes be a sense that there's no support system available as an online student. It can kind of seem like far. And this can typically lead to feelings of doubt among remote students, potentially leading to negatively impacting their onset of their higher education journey. When it comes to common challenges that students experience, at least from my experience is as a Gen 101 instructor here at UAGC, I thought it would make the most sense to break it down into 3 points because everyone remembers 3 is the best. So to give you the first point, I wanted to address how in some institutions, incoming students of all ages can lack proficiency in literacy. According to some spring 2023 ETS Performance results published by UAGC, about 75% of students entering UAGC lack proficiency in literacy skills such as reading and writing. As you can see in this chart here, the not proficiency levels from the data set far exceed those with marginal or proficient literacy skills. So that was just one factor that I identified. My second point that I want you to take away from this presentation is the challenge of addressing imposter syndrome when entering college. UAGC and many other online educational institutions don't always require an entrance exam when getting accepted, and this can potentially increase feelings of imposter syndrome as education is often seen as a risk financially and emotionally for incoming new students. And the third takeaway I would like for you to take from this presentation is that students may not be familiar with just how supportive their school is. UAGC is uniquely upholds the culture of care, and it's something that students greatly benefit from as long as they stay on course, stay communicative with their instructor, and just stay on top of the ball. We'll talk a little bit more about our culture of care here in this presentation. So I thought it would be a cool exercise to go ahead and take the 3 takeaways I'd want you to take from this presentation and explain how they may intersect and highlight areas that we can explore to encourage educational advancement online. Let's go ahead and take a look at this first quadrant here on the right, where we look at the intersection of lacking proficiency and literacy and imposter syndrome when entering college. And I identified how students can feel less inclined to reach out for support from their instructor, which would benefit from more instructor proactivity. So when it comes to instructor proactivity, Tobenna et al. Published in 2024 highlighted how an instructor's effectiveness in online teaching largely depends on how they strategically utilize communication technology with students. In my personal experience, I found that students are less inclined to reach out for support, and whether that's because they lack proficiency or have imposter syndrome, it can impact how they choose to interact or not interact with their instructor. And as an online adjunct faculty, I can think of many instances where I had to readjust how I typically reach out to students to help them more effectively and ultimately impact how they perform in the course. I think this recent story I've experienced in a grading management system here we use here at UAGC called Waypoint or Turnitin highlights the benefits of being a proactive instructor online. For those of you who may or may not know, Waypoint is essentially an online system that some institutions use. It's a grading management system that allows students to upload their assignments and be able to help instructors provide on-demand feedback on assignments, detect plagiarism, and many other features that are beneficial to both the instructor and the student. And I'm sure educational institution may use something similar like Turnitin or Waypoint or some other grading management system. Well, I bring up Waypoint because students aren't always familiar with it at the onset of their educational journeys. From my experience, I would say about 1 in 10 students I teach have they interface some challenge when it comes to submitting work to the Waypoint system in my Gen 101 course, which is, as I may have mentioned earlier, a Gen 101 is an introductory course that's intended to help students familiarize themselves with UAGC and its resources. And Waypoint's one of those bigger things that they would have to be familiarized with. So one particular time, I had a student who kept uploading her assignments to Waypoint, but these assignments appeared to be corrupted every single time I tried to grade them. And she never reached out to me in the Canvas inbox or via my email after I marked her assignments as missing. So in the nature of instructor proactivity, I took a proactive approach as soon as possible by reaching out to the student and suggesting ways they can contact the UAGC helpline for any technology challenges they may be experiencing. Unfortunately, the student still continued to see challenges after I suggested she reach out to the UAGC helpline. So I even took it upon myself to be more proactive and reach out to the campus helpline myself to get this student in queue to be helped. It turned out that whenever I reached out to the campus helpline, I was able to help determine that the file the student was submitting was not a valid Microsoft document. It appeared that the student was using Word online through their web browser and attempted to save the entire web page as a Word document. And the helpline was able to help provide a step-by-step instructions on how to properly upload her assignments and save them correctly as a Microsoft Word document, like the .docx file to Waypoint. And this ultimately led to the student being able to see my comprehensive feedback and help guide them in completing the course because they now knew how to upload their assignments correctly. It was a great moment for both me and the student when we helped her overcome her challenges uploading assignments to Waypoint. So hopefully this story helps illustrate the importance of instructor proactivity at the onset of a student's journey in higher education. Ultimately, when students are less inclined to reach out for support, the instructor can make a meaningful difference in their academic experience by taking a proactive approach. So great, now we're back at our Venn diagram. Let's go ahead and take a look at the second part of the intersection here at the bottom, which is the intersection of imposter syndrome when entering college and emphasizing a culture of care. And this would involve providing unique, personalized feedback from which students can benefit from. So when it comes to personalized feedback, it's important to note how a student-centered approach to online instruction often leads to more meaningful interactions with the student and instructor, and utilizing resources such like a SWOT analysis to give students personalized feedback can bode well for their long-term success. In my experience, utilizing resources like a SWOT analysis to give students personalized feedback, it's always helped them identify their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that come along with being an incoming student here at UAGC in Gen 101. And I'm curious, like I mentioned, I like my presentations to be interactive, so you can go ahead and drop in the chat any other mind mapping strategies that you may have used in your classes, such as the SWOT analysis, SWOT goals, or Myers-Briggs personality tests. Whatever it is, I'd like to just learn a little bit more about the strategies that you found successful to identifying key aspects about your students that you may be teaching. But anyway, to share another example from one of my classes, thanks to modern communication technology, I was able to provide a more personalized experience for students by providing voice notes and voice responses because they had identified that one of their weaknesses was that they had a hard time understanding American English. So being able to utilize the modern technology that is available to us, rather than just giving them written notes, I was able to give them voice notes and voice responses and even video responses. This approach was highly appreciated by my student, and I was happy to be able to make their experience more meaningful by accommodating them at the onset of their journey in higher education. Again, it's that proactivity, it's being proactive and giving them that personalized feedback that was key to helping them reach success early on in their career. So let's go ahead and return back to the Venn diagram. And I'll go ahead and just get through this. That way we can ask any questions at the end. That way we can see the full thing of this Venn diagram, which is the intersection of emphasizing a culture of care and lacking proficiency in literacy. And I like to think of this as emphasizing university resources whenever they're early or as early as possible for a student's academic career. So when it comes to maximizing resources available to students in an online institution, academic outcomes are affected by how students perceive their online learning environment and how student engagement strategies are implemented. So I always encourage educators to familiarize themselves with at least 3 to 5 specific resources their institution provides to students for free. It's also very important to strategically mention these university resources in a way that make it easy for a student to engage. Personally, as a doctoral student as well as an instructor, I'm able to utilize what I learned as a student to then give that advice directly to the students I'm teaching. It's like a great beneficial feedback loop. I'll go ahead and review some of the select few of my favorite UAGC resources to recommend students. And in the nature of interactivity, I would also love to hear more about some of the university resources you may have utilized that are useful for students in the chat. For starters, if a student has a minor grammatical oversight in their assignments, I'll kindly let them know that UAGC students have access to free Grammarly accounts using their school email. And I find that whenever I mention these types of resources directly in their assignments and Waypoint, as feedback that they get in real time for their assignments, it creates a greater uptick of the student taking advantage of Grammarly early on in their academic careers. And the same would go for something like with the functionality of Waypoint and the grading management system I mentioned earlier. As I said, many students don't typically know how to check their work for plagiarism, and being able to do that in Waypoint helps them overcome, accidental plagiarism, whether it's referencing work or using a correct APA formatting to reference their work. They can run into a lot of issues if they aren't properly citing their work. So just helping them have the tools to figure out if they're doing that correctly early on has usually helped them as a Gen 101 student. And then there's always resources like UAGC's Live Learning and the 24/7 Writing Center for students to work directly with other students and faculty to help them improve their work or familiarize themselves with the key expectations for their current course. So ultimately, every educational institution is different, right? So I encourage you to consider making a top 5 list of a list of university resources you can potentially suggest for your students in a way that's engaging and meaningful for them. And that's what I have for you guys as far as the overlapping section of the 3 original points I brought, or the 3 original common challenges I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this presentation. It's always good to come full circle. To quickly summarize, the first point I want you guys to take from this presentation is educators need to be aware of how imposter syndrome and low literacy can potentially make students feel less likely to ask for help. Being a proactive instructor is critical to a student's success, especially in an online institution. Secondly, using a student-centered approach usually results in higher quality interactions between teachers and students. And finally, instructors ought to highlight the resources available at their institution in an enticing and engaging way to motivate students to utilize them from the onset of their higher education journey. With that, I wanted to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to my presentation. I'm happy to discuss anything that was thrown in the chat that I can't see, or take any questions.
I have a question, Toby. Excellent presentation. This is Teresa Handy. You are a fairly new instructor, and I want to ask you, how is it that you've managed to make these connections at this juncture, at this point? So we can maybe figure out how to help other new faculty make the same kind of adjustment.
Yeah, I think something that I mentioned earlier in my presentation was the mind mapping strategies that we have integrated in our Gen 101 course. SMART goals, like actually paying attention, or SMART goals and the SWOT analysis, especially with the SWOT analysis, is probably a better example, because that's something that students interface in the very first week of the Gen 101 course. So being able to just look at their weaknesses, see how I can help them overcome those, especially potential threats like external challenges they may be experiencing outside of the academic classroom, being able to really pay close attention to that and keep it in mind whenever I'm providing feedback helps the students realize, wow, my instructor actually remembered that I have, daycare. I had to take my kids to daycare and I wasn't able to turn to this. And stuff like that helps just build that relationship, and I would say helps motivate them to want to remain in the course, finish up the 5 weeks, and just have a great jump start to their academic career.
But what about you as the faculty member? How did you make those connections to use the resources and to, I want to understand your role, like how you came to do those practices in your class.
I would like to say I leaned on my experiences as being a doctoral student as well, but I understand not everybody's a doctoral student. So for me, it was a lot of the resources that was emailed to me throughout my onboarding training. I like to say I was drinking from the fire hose, but one thing I would say helped me a lot was if I got a resource, for instance, like the Student Support Center or resources like such as that in an email, I would pin that email and just always have it as almost like a bookmark for me to always reference back to. And always doing that. I've taught it, like you said, I'm a newer instructor. I've taught about 4 courses so far right now. And just being able to reference back to that, it's almost like a scaffolding or a layering of those resources. I'm able to, and once I implement it once in one of my courses, I'll remember to always go back to that. And I guess one other thing that I typically do as an instructor is I have a ongoing Word document that I just save certain advice to myself, certain even feedback that I give to students. I'll just have that saved. That way it's like I'm not reinventing the wheel. Whenever I find a success strategy to help connect with the student more, I'll just put that in a Word document that's for my own memory. That way I don't have to reinvent the wheel, and I can re-implement that and just find success with interacting with that student.
Thank you. Great.
No problem.
That's awesome, Toby. I think that's such a great strategy too. Like when you find something that works, that's fantastic. Any other questions?
I'm interested, Toby, in hearing if you share with your students that you were in their seat doing, virtual asynchronous schooling, and how that you think might impact the relationships that you're having with your students, if you do share.
Yeah, I guess I don't typically say it in my, like, let's say for my introduction post. That's something that I'll probably say and like maybe like week 2 or week 1 of discussion post response to their introduction. So it's almost like I'm just giving them like information about me in a layered, and not in a layered way, in like bits and pieces, based on the context of what they're interacting with me about. So I do mention that. Okay, so for an example, like someone was asking me, like, I don't know how to keep up with all my assignments, and like I'll just show them a screen, not of my own work, but I'll just say, hey, as a student, I use the calendar app. This is my favorite thing in Canvas to keep track of when everything is due, and just telling them that, hey, this has helped me as a student. In turn, I feel as though they connect with it more deeply, because I would be giving them advice for my own sake, as opposed to from an instructor's perspective. So that's actually a great point. I appreciate you bringing that up, and mentioning being a student as well might even get that buy-in much earlier on from students.
Yeah, I would say lean into it more if you haven't used it a lot, just because when we're creating resources for students, we try to get, students in videos and that sort of thing, because we know it carries so much more weight coming from someone who's experienced it recently. So I think you come from a perspective that many of us don't have, and it could be used as a great leverage to, start those relationships. Not that that's the sole thing that would create a relationship, but you mentioned before, our students, some might have some low literacy rates, some might have imposter syndrome, I'm sure low efficacy. It's just that initial touch point that you could have that might get them to open up a bit.
Absolutely, I agree.
That's great. What a great presentation, Toby. And thank you so much. Especially, I mean, you being a newer instructor, it's just incredible what you've been able to pick up in just that short amount of time. And I really loved how you remember certain things about your students, because that personal touch really goes a long way. It makes people feel very seen, even if it's just like, how did your doctor's appointment go, or how's your son doing, or whatever the case may be. But really wonderful presentation. As we wrap up, is there any other questions in the room? All right. Okay, so thank you all for being here, and thank you so much, Toby, for that presentation. And thank you for the audience for their participation.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, please use the survey that is linked in the chat to nominate TLC presentations for conference awards and share your feedback on this specific presentation. Thank you all so much for coming, and enjoy the rest of TLC.
Thank you, everyone, again.